This is Join Us in France, episode 303. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and today I bring you a conversation with Elyse about the Route des Fromages AOP d'Auvergne. What's that, you ask? We're talking cheese from the Auvergne region today. The word Auvergne designates an old French province around its capital, Clermont-Ferrand. Today, it is part of the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region, and it is just a little west of Lyon and the Alps. This region produces a lot of wonderful cheeses, and they are going to be the stars of the show. Bleu d'Auvergne, Cantal, Forma Damber, Saint-Nectaire, and Salers. One of them is my favorite cheese ever. Elyse tells us about the small towns that produce those cheeses and what you might see there when you visit. Another excellent show that takes us off the beaten track in France. For my personal update after my conversation with Elyse, I'll update you about my cookbook and Swiffer, the dog who is back. And I made a major discovery about him today. Thank you, patrons, for giving me a precious gift, the time to produce this podcast. Your monthly gift makes it all possible, and in these times of uncertainty that keep dragging on, I can't tell you how much it means to me. And a shout out to new patrons and more info on how to join all my wonderful patrons after the interview. If you're coming to France soon, check out my audio self-guided tours on joinusinfrance.com/audio tours. As I record this, I have 4 of them for Paris, and I will release more as time goes by because I love the freedom and the depth that these tours provide. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/303, where you can see a recap of what we've discussed and find relevant links. Also, follow Addicted to France on Instagram to see the photos of this beautiful and not touristy part of France. I'll post them this week. If you'd like to keep up with me and with what's happening with the show and my tours and my cookbook and all of that, sign up for the newsletter. You can subscribe by going to joinusinfrance.com and look for the green button that says Extras. Bonjour, Elyse.
Bonjour, Annie.
How are you on this beautiful day?
This very beautiful, slightly gray, but nice and cool day.
Yes, we're recording on my terrace again.
On her terrace.
The terrace where all good things happen.
All good things happen here, exactly. And I can look at her gorgeous begonias, yes.
Yeah, the begonias are very happy, aren't they?
Yes, they certainly are.
Yeah. Elyse, today we are going to talk about the Route des Fromages d'Auvergne.
Yes, we're going to talk about a very, very beautiful part of France and its very delicious cheeses.
Mm-hmm. Cheese. Mm.
Cheese.
Mm. And we're smelling good smells too because I'm testing a recipe for the book, for the cookbook.
For the cookbook.
I'm testing the pot-au-feu.
And today. I'm one of her guinea pigs.
Yes, she's one of the guinea pigs.
Yum, yum, yum.
So there you have it. But before we get to that, let's do a shout out for your new patrons, shall we?
Yes, let me just mention a couple of new people that have signed up in the last period of time, and that is Sally and Molly, and lastly, Ruth. Thank you so very much for joining my Patreon, Elise's Corner.
Right. So to see that, on the show notes, there will be a link, both on the app and on the page. And also, if you just want to go directly to Patreon, it's patreon.com/Elyse Art.
Elyse Art. Yes.
ELYSART.
Exactly.
There you go. I can even smell.
She can smell. She can smell.
I can smell too.
She can smell
it's
too.
It's a good sign. I'm not sick.
And you can also go to my website, as a guide, Toulouse Guided Walks, where there is a button for the Patreon,
Yep.
and there is also a button for listening to all of the podcasts.
Yeah, you can listen from there if you'd like. Yeah.
You can do both of those things.
Yeah. All right. So, la route des fromages d'Auvergne. So, let's try and say this English. This is the route of cheeses
In Auvergne.
from the Auvergne.
The Auvergne region. Region, which is historically a very, very interesting area. And it is in the south central part of France. It is the area where there are an enormous number of extinct volcanoes. So the land is extremely rich. It is also one of the least inhabited parts of France. And probably to foreigners, it's one of the least known parts of France.
That's right, yeah.
It is also one of the most gorgeous parts of France.
Right.
Now, this is not Mediterranean. This is green. Beautiful valleys, gorgeous medieval villages, high mountains. In the winter, there's snow and skiing in this whole region. Lots of cross-country skiing and some downhill skiing. Part of the pilgrimage road going to Compostelle goes right through the middle of this whole area. It's filled with history, and it's filled with gorgeous fat cows that produce wonderful milk. And therefore, the Auvergne area is famous for its cheeses.
Of course, yes.
And they're all cow cheeses.
Yes.
And the departments that we're going to really be talking about in relation to these cheeses, there are 5 of them, are the Cantal, which is the closest to where we are, even though it's not very close because it's really quite a bit further north. It's to get to the Cantal, it's a good 3 hours of driving already from Toulouse.
Right, but it's in Occitanie.
It's in Occitanie.
Yeah.
And then we get into the Puy-de-Dôme, which is above that. And you have the Allier, which is above that. And to the east of it is the Haute-Loire. Those are the 4 departments that are basically where all these cheeses are produced.
Right.
A teeny little bit in another department, but it doesn't really matter. We're not going to have to talk about it. It's too confusing.
Right. It's a little bit. Now, you have to know that in France, it's like changing counties in America.
Yeah.
You're in a different county and you don't necessarily know that you're in a different county, right?
Exactly.
But in France, it's the same. And this one, the name Haute-Loire, is a little bit surprising because it's nowhere near the Loire River.
It's the beginning. It's where it comes out of the mountains.
Right. That's where the Loire River starts. That's why it's called La Haute, because it's the high.
It's the high.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is something that's also very strange. And even after years of living in France, I really have a hard time with this high, haute, and the low. Like in the Alsace area, the Haute-Rhin,
yeah,
is the bottom part. See, to me, it's like if you look at the map, the top part where it's north should be the Haut-Rhin.
Parce que si on est en Haute-Garonne.
Yeah, because this is
where
right.
the Garonne starts somewhere south of here.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Haute-Garonne is a very long, skinny north to south department, so it probably starts.
Exactly, it starts in the
south.
Pyrenees.
Yeah, in the Pyrenees.
So don't pay attention to haute in France. It has nothing to do with what you think it does.
Not the altitude necessarily.
It has nothing to do with altitude. It has nothing to do with going north either, Anyway, so in this region, which has many, many, many interesting things to see and to do, and honestly, cultural things, lots and lots of outdoor things. It's really magnificently gorgeous, I have to say. I mean, lots of parts of France are beautiful for different reasons, and there are many places in France that I absolutely love. This is particularly spectacular. It's also, because it's not that developed, it adds to its spectacularness because you really see far. And if you go to 2 or 3 of the places that have the extinct volcanoes, these are, covered with green. You see, you can go up to the top. A few of them, you can take your car almost up to the top. It's not extremely high, but you have a vista that's absolutely fabulous, really fabulous. Yeah. So, what makes it special, and the route de fromage of this area, the cheese route, is that it's the only region of France. Now, there are many cheese routes in France. There are many wine routes in France.
Right.
Each area really seems to have one. But one of the specificities of this area is that it has 5 cheeses that are labeled AOP, which is the attribute, like with wines, that means it's very specific, high quality cheese that's produced from a very specific area. And it's the only region that has 5, and all 5 of them are cow cheese. So this is a region for cows.
Yeah, like you said, you drive around and you see cows.
You see cows.
Beautiful cows.
Beautiful cows.
You could never have happier cows than the cows in these regions.
This would be a competition. If the cows could talk, the cows of Auvergne could have a competition with the cows of Normandy to decide who is a happier cow, actually, I think. Because
they get more rain probably in Normandy.
They probably get more rain, and they are pretty nice and fat and luscious looking,
yes,
you know.
Yes, they're beautiful.
But the cows here, they have something special about them, and there's just something. Anyway, so and just a couple of.
So this is going to be funny because on the Addicted to France Instagram group, every week I post photos pertaining to the episode.
Yes.
Right? So this week it'll be cow photos.
It will be cows. In fact, I sent you a picture of a Salers cow yesterday.
Right,
I don't know if you saw it.
It was beautiful.
I love
nice
them.
long horns.
Yes,
beautiful.
they're beautiful brown rust color.
Yeah, they're kind of reddish.
They have
brown.
long, frizzy kind of hair. I don't usually have a love affair with cows. That's,
These are really pretty.
These are really beautiful cows, and they are just, oh, wow.
So if you want to see cows, French cows, happy French cows.
Yes, this is, go to this area.
Go to this area or to the Addicted to France on Instagram.
So Auvergne, just a couple of things because it's kind of fun. And I was thinking maybe what we should do is do another episode where we talk really about more of the historical aspects of Auvergne, because this time we're really going to stay mostly with the idea of the cheeses and all the culture of that. But this is the area that was used in Asterix a lot for the stories in Asterix, because this is the country of the Auvergne.
Les Auvergne.
That's how we get to Auvergne. The word Auvergne comes from.
So in Asterix, are they called the Auvergne or les Auvergne? I can't remember.
The real name for them. This is the Celtic tribes that fought against Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
And they were the last.
Oh, everybody knows that. If they listen to us, they know that.
So this is the territory of the people who stood the last stand against the Romans before the Romans took over France. And they had a huge territory. And this was the territory that became eventually called it was the Counts of Auvergne once it really became French. So it was a hugely powerful area in spite of the fact that it's that remote, because it is really remote. The city that is the only city that people might have heard of that is included in this is Clermont-Ferrand.
Ah, yes.
Which is a city that is, or has been in the past, associated with industry because Michelin is there. The Michelin tires, the Michelin industry settled in Clermont, I think because of the quality of the water, and so there's a lot of industry in Clermont-Ferrand. It's
a very industrial town. Yeah.
It's a city with a huge cathedral that's made out of black volcanic rock. It's it's very spectacular. It's black. It's
very
actually
different.
Very lava type. And then if you are in a big city, and for those of you who have visited France, who are thinking of going to France, to go to this area, the city that actually is the easiest to leave from is Lyon. Which is is not that far from Clermont-Ferrand going east. It's on the other side of the Rhône-Saône River. But if you leave from Lyon going west, you actually come to the top of this area, the northern part of this area. Or you can, of course, go, if you're in a car, which is the best way, of course, to visit areas like this, you can, of course, go from pretty much anywhere you want. But it is not close to any other big city.
Right.
And so it's that. So the 5 cheeses that are famous, and these are cheeses that are really well known by anybody who is French, because these are not local cheeses. These are cheeses that you can find pretty much
all over the country,
everywhere, except for one that is more of a specialty cheese, and we'll just mention that in a minute why. But the 5 cheeses are the Cantal, the Saint-Nectaire,
which I love,
the Salers, which is kind of cousin of the Cantal. You have the Bleu d'Auvergne.
Very good stuff.
Forma Damber.
I don't really know the difference between Bleu d'Auvergne and Forma Damber.
Well, already for those of you out there listening, those are 2 blue cheeses. Okay,
right.
So the other 3 are not blue cheeses. Then 2 are harder cheeses. One is creamier. That is the Saint-Nectaire.
Saint-Nectaire is creamy. It's so
the
good.
The Bleu d'Auvergne is a little bit more. It has more of a bite to it. It's the least the Forma Damber is the creamiest and less bite of the blue cheeses in France. The Roquefort is the most extreme because it's very, very salty and it really has a kick to it. The Bleu d'Auvergne is kind of halfway in between. It's creamy, but it's not, it still has a little bit of a bite because it is a blue cheese. Whereas the Forma Damber is really the one that has the least, and that is why it is the one that's used the most in recipes. When there's a blue cheese that's used in cooking and making things, it is almost always the Forma Damber.
Because it's not as flavorful.
Because it's not as flavorful, and because it doesn't overpower if it's mixed with other things.
You know, this gives me a good idea, because on Sunday my family's coming over and we're going to be around this table again and enjoying a family potluck. Maybe I'll do a big cheese plate.
You could do a big cheese plate.
Because I'm always, when I do things like that during this pandemic, I think, I don't want people to share utensils or to touch the same stuff. But if I don't put knives on the cheese plate and I just give them each their own knife, then maybe it would be a good, no ladles to share.
No ladles to share.
Yeah. No, maybe. Anyway, sorry about that.
Think about it. Think about it. So this is the thing, that the Route de Fromage in the Auvergne area has 40 different places you can stop.
Wow.
40. Nobody's going to do that.
No.
It covers a huge area.
Yeah, too many.
The south of Cantal, which is where it begins, basically. From there, going up to the north, which is into the department of the Allier, is a fairly big area, and it's a very huge rural area. Mm-hmm. So the different places are pretty spread out. So if you go on to different websites, and I did this a lot yesterday, there was one map of almost all the websites that I was trying to pull out, but for some reason it wouldn't print out. They didn't like me. I printed out a little piece of it, but
I tried to print that out too. It didn't work.
Something happened. I don't know. You have to either bite the cheese before it prints or something. I don't know what you're supposed to do. But anyway, I'm going to start at the south, because the south, the department called the Cantal, which is really exquisitely beautiful and very rural. The city, the only city there is a city called Aurillac. It's one of the coldest places in France in the wintertime. If you look at the weather maps in the wintertime, it's almost always there that it's the coldest. It's covered with snow. The whole region is covered with snow in the winter. But if you go in the summertime, it is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so the Cantal cheese is one of the oldest cheeses known in France. Sorry, Normandy. Sorry, there in the Brie de Meaux and all of that nonsense. So it is a region of cheese making that goes back to the 1300s, as far as recorded known time where it's cheese. And this is interesting. These are the little tidbits I love. The Cantal cheese, which is a kind of creamy white cheese that has 3 different categories. It's okay. Now, people will argue with me about this, but it is a cheese that in texture and in some of it, the taste of the more aged, is the equivalent in France of what would be like a cheddar, okay? To give people an idea. It's not creamy. It's not Comté, which is kind of what people would associate with like Swiss cheese, a good Gruyere Swiss cheese. Cantal it's firm, it's creamy, it's made into huge wheels that weigh 40 kilos. Mm-hmm. That's enormous, absolutely enormous. Mm-hmm. And it's this very nice off-white, creamy color. And you can either get it young, which means that it's only been aged for 1 to 2 months, or what they call entre deux, which means in between old and young. I like to think I'm entre deux, but I'm probably not anymore. And that is 3 to 4 or 5 months of aging. And then vieux, which is the equivalent of what would be a matured, aged cheddar in the States, for instance, or in England. And that is a minimum of 6 months.
Which is a lot less than what you do with a comté, because un vieux comté, il a 24 mois.
That's right. But it's not
24 months.
It's
for
a
an old
very
comté.
different texture. In other words,
Right.
the comté is pressed,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Right,
kept
right.
for a very, very long time. This is more of a crumblier kind of texture to the cheese.
Yeah.
You can eat it like that. You can eat it with fruit. You can eat it. You can cook with it if you want. Cantal is really one of my most favorite cheeses of all. Anyway, so in the time of Louis XIV, because somebody had brought him some cheeses from the Auvergne area, the two cheeses that he loved were this and the Saint-Nectaire. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes.
Good man.
And he had wagon loads of these cheeses brought up to Versailles from the Auvergne area. And it was like, no, this is the cheese I want.
Yes.
Please, you know. So there are 23 communes, or that means towns, that produce it. And it goes over the Auvergne area a little bit into the northern part of Aveyron. It's not really complicated it's just basically the central area.
Yeah.
In other words, it's a cheese that's produced a lot and it covers the entire Auvergne area.
Mm-hmm.
However, in the department of the Cantal, which is where a lot of the Cantal, of course, by definition, is produced, if you go higher elevation, you come to an area where you have a cheese that is a very, very exclusive cheese because it is produced only from April 15th to November 15th from wild grass that's grown on the highest elevations of the volcanic land. And it is the milk of the Salers cows. Mm-hmm. And only the Salers cows. That's Salers.
That's the pretty ones we were mentioning
Those are
earlier.
the pretty ones. They are so gorgeous, right? And it is only in the mountains of Cantal and around the Mont Doré, which is one of the volcanic mountains, and another one called Allier. So it's high up. It has to be above 900 feet between.
Could you spell Allier?
Cazallier.
Okay.
So it is only in this region, and the cheese is only with raw milk, whereas Cantal, like all the others, can be either raw milk or pasteurized.
Right.
There is a difference in labeling, in fact, when it's called
very
that
much
way.
so, yes.
But the Salers is only raw milk, and it's made exclusively at the farm by the farmers who have the Salers cow. So it's not even pooled milk into a cooperative or anything like that, which is why it's a cheese that's relatively expensive.
Yeah.
And it is delicious.
Yeah.
It is like the most aged, mature Cantal you can get. It's in the category. I mean,
you have to understand that in France, an affordable cheese is around 10 euros a kilo.
Which is really nothing.
That's right. That's an affordable cheese. Then you go to the 20s, 20 euros a kilo, where it is getting up there.
Yeah.
You might buy some of that,
right?
For Sunday lunch or whatever. And then 30 and up, we consider very expensive.
Very expensive. That's like the most exclusive. Roquefort is that price, and the Salers is up there. It's like maybe 28 or 29 euros a kilo.
Yeah.
But
and
again,
probably if you buy this in America, you'll pay even more for that because it has to
imported.
It has to make the trip.
And the Salers, unlike the Cantal, which you can find pretty much packaged anywhere. The Salers is just usually in specialty cheese shops, and they will have it for a certain amount of time because it is only produced for a certain number of months out of the year. So then they will have the cheese, and of course it is kept a very, very short time because it is raw cheese, but it's pressed, and it is also, and this is amazing. Okay, so to make a 40-kilo wheel requires 400 kilos of milk.
Wow. It's a lot, yeah.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
It's good. Just the ratio is 1 to 10. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So that is the famous Salers cheese. Again, it's one that is the only one that is made strictly at the farm with raw milk, whereas all the others, you have a version that can be either raw milk or not raw milk, including the Cantals. And the Cantals is the only other one that has 3 different categories in terms of how aged you want it to be. If you get there's also a Cantal that comes out at Christmas called the Christmas Cantal.
Cantal de Noël.
Oh, it's so delicious. And it's very mild and creamy. Very mild and creamy. So, it's very good. Okay. So, let's talk now about your favorite cheese.
Yes.
Saint-Nectaire.
Saint-Nectaire. I love that stuff.
So it's interesting because each of these cheeses has a designated territory, except for the Cantal, which is pretty much over the entire region. So le Saint-Nectaire, which of course is not the same texture or taste as the Cantal cheeses or the Salers cheeses. This is a cheese that is creamier. It has a nutty taste. It really does. I mean, my husband makes fun of all of these descriptions of like foods and wines where they're always talking about it. It's got a nutty taste, but this one really has a nutty taste.
Yeah,
it really does.
Yeah.
It's known for being a nutty kind of a creamy taste. It's a flat wheel that's very small compared to the others. It's the wheel itself is 1.7 kilos, which is relatively small, and it's flat. It's not one of these huge things with these enormous slices.
It's probably 2 inches thick.
Right, exactly.
2, maybe 3.
And again, it can either be made. You can buy Saint-Nectaire Fermier, which is raw milk,
which is what I buy all the time,
or you can buy it what they call. It's pasteurized.
Oh, yeah.
It's pasteurized.
And
then it is not considered to be fermier.
Right.
It is. It's interesting that the milk for the Saint-Nectaire is from 800 meters to 1500 meters in altitude. So it's interesting that it designates this is part of the. How do you say in English, cahier de charge? This is what you have to do for it to be counted as a Saint-Nectaire.
Right. So it's your cahier de charge.
I don't know how you say that.
It'll come back to me. I know this, but not just
It's the list of rules and things you have to follow.
Yeah.
You have to follow. Okay. It is half of the northern half of Cantal and then the Puy-de-Dôme, which is really up above and going north above the Cantal. So that is the area. And I have a quick little story to tell about Saint-Nectaire. The summer that my husband and I did this trip all through the Auvergne, we were doing a trip that was a combination of looking at the volcanoes and looking at beautiful old medieval villages and eating. How's that? That's not a bad trip, right?
It's not a bad trip. Well, you're missing some wine, but I'm sure you had some.
Yes. Yes. They don't produce the wine there, but this is France, right?
Yeah.
And we had stayed in 2 or 3 different villages. We took a week to go through the Auvergne area. And as we come out of the northern part of the Saint-Nectaire area, we did part of the Route de Fromage. And it is very beautiful. And of course, what you have on the Route de Fromage, I mentioned at the beginning, it's 40 different stops. You have some places that are just tasting places. Some places it's the farm where you can actually see the cows and you can even participate in milking the cows. Some places it's a combination. There are various different kinds of things along this way. And it's all these different private farms and everything. And so we were on this road. And I see these signs saying Route de Fromage, and we were heading towards Paris to go to my mother-in-law's visit her for a few days. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden we pass this house that has a sign, Producteur de Saint-Nectaire, visite gratuite. Yeah. So I think we actually
free visit,
free visit, which usually means free tasting.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those days. There weren't a lot of people around. It's never an area that's really super crowded anyway.
Yeah.
So stopped on the brake. We put the brakes on, we looked at each other. It was like, hey, let's do this. So we go in, knock on the door, and there's this very nice woman. I don't remember too much about her, who comes out. And she was in her house. And so we ask if it's possible to actually go and taste her cheeses. And she says, oh, yes. So she takes us into the place where she's stocking her Saint-Nectaire, which is from her own cows, and she's produced it herself. This is the real thing. And he gives us a taste, and it was very, very delicious. Now, the thing about Saint-Nectaire is that because it's not a pressed cheese, it's a cheese that ripens rather quickly. Mm-hmm. But we didn't really pay attention to that idea. And we decided that we were going to buy 3 wheels of this and take them up to Paris with us.
No,
Yeah, because we were going to leave one for my now defunct mother-in-law.
She probably ate like 100 grams of it.
And one that we were going to give to various relatives in Paris, and one we were going to put in the fridge there and take back to Toulouse with us in a car. This is the summertime. We were in a car. We didn't have a refrigerated something or other in the car for the cheeses, and we were not that day going to be in Paris.
Right.
So what happened was we had this, you do have these plastic like coolers, that we had been carrying things in. So I was we'll put this in the cooler. And it's in France, you can't just go buy a huge bag of ice. It's very hard to find.
Yeah.
So we wrapped up these 3 Saint-Nectaire, whole Saint-Nectaire, right? Which we got for an incredibly cheap price, And, this is going to be so much fun. And we'll wait till we get one back to Toulouse. And it took us, I think, another 2 days and 2 nights before we got to my mother-in-law's place in Paris.
Uh-huh.
And when we got there, we took the cooler up to the apartment and opened up the cooler. And
yeah.
The cheese had ripened.
Yeah.
It was very good, but it was important that everybody eat it within 24 hours, basically, because it was 48 hours without any refrigeration, without, they're kept in these caves, which are usually kept at a temperature of about, 45, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so that you don't have any heat exposure to it. Well, of course, we ate a lot of cheese for the next 2 days, but we were so stupid because we looked at each other. It was like, we're not bringing one back to Toulouse. And I thought, no way.
No.
We're not putting this back in the car again. This is what we're doing. But that was my Saint-Nectaire story.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Saint-Nectaire, when I buy it, I always buy the Fermier.
Yeah.
Because it has more flavor to it, I think.
It has much more flavor.
Yeah. And I just take it out of the fridge probably a couple of hours before we eat, because then it'll get just a little softer.
Right.
It'll get to room temperature and it's perfect. But I would not keep it in a car.
No, you wouldn't keep it in the car in the summertime. It is an absolutely delicious cheese, though.
Yes.
And it is very different from the Cantal and the Salers.
Yes.
It's
much
very
softer.
Nutty. Softer, nuttier tasting.
I can't think of...
earthy tasting.
Yeah. Well, how would you compare it to other cheeses in France that are famous? It's not like a Gruyère, which is c'est une pâte dure.
I don't know of any other cheese that has a similar taste, honestly, because there are lots and lots of cheeses in France. We know that. There are lots of goat cheeses. There are lots of sheep cheeses, too. But honestly, this one is very different. It's got this very strong, nutty flavor. It does get strong tasting, but it's not a bad strong tasting. There are certain cheeses I will not eat. I just will not.
Me neither.
Yeah, I won't go near them.
Yeah, I, as a matter of fact, I prefer cheeses that are not too strong, generally speaking. So this is not... It's strong. It's just flavor.
It's got flavor. It's got a strong flavor.
Of flavor.
It's really got a lot of flavor. So anyway, I love my Saint-Nectaire. Sorry, my Salers. When we went driving, we went up through the Cantal first, and that was when I discovered the Salers cows and fell in love with them. And then we actually stopped in the village of Salers. I mentioned some places that are really pretty to stop at the end. And so these were parts of the adventure of going in the Auvergne area.
It reminds me of when I was working in London years ago. My mother decided to send me some cheese through the mail. Yeah, the landlady was like, "What is in this package?"
Oh yeah, I know stories like that.
But this was years ago. Like I was 20, and my mother. She knew. I probably had written a letter saying I missed cheese or something, so she sent me some cheese in the mail.
Yeah. Well, that's mothers with good intentions, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's come to the blue cheeses.
I love those too.
Okay, so we have, everybody I think knows that Roquefort is a cheese that's made from sheep's milk, and it's in the southern part it's in the coast area, which is actually south of this region than the Auvergne. But there are other blue cheeses produced in France as well, several as a matter of fact. And one of them that is, I would say ubiquitous meaning that it's one that's easy to find in any store you go to that has any kind of a dairy section whatsoever, is called the Bleu d'Auvergne.
Yeah, Bleu d'Auvergne is everywhere.
It's everywhere. And
it's big production. I'm sure they produce a ton of it.
They produce a lot of it. But it's actually a very, very nice cheese. If you want a blue cheese, there are the 2 blue cheeses that come from this area that are not as strong and really really pungent as Roquefort, these are cheeses to try if you want to try blue cheeses. So the Bleu d'Auvergne is produced in the Cantal, the northern part of the Cantal, the Puy-de-Dôme, and part of the Haute-Loire.
So a lot of the Auvergne.
So a lot of the Auvergne.
Yeah.
And it is a moderately strong tasting without being extremely strong tasting blue cheese, but it has a creamy texture to it. It's not crumbly like Roquefort.
Yes.
It's a much creamier taste. And again, you can get it raw or pasteurized, although most of what I think I see, at least in the supermarkets, is pasteurized, I think, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, mostly it is pasteurized. I don't think I've ever bought an unpasteurized.
Probably have to go to one of the farms that produces it, which is one of these. That's one of the advantages of one of the nice things about doing this route is that you really go to where they're producing all these cheeses, And
but you have to be warned that at those farms, when you go to the farm, they want to sell you some quantities of the thing. They don't want to sell you, a tiny slice. Most places, and so. Bring a cooler.
Bring a cooler. Or if you're going to just get, you can be in a place, not just the farms, but sometimes they have what would be like the equivalent of a small cooperative outlet where you can buy pieces, and you can buy a chunk and then you can, of course, use it.
And these days anymore, you can get one of these coolers that plugs into your cigarette lighter. Yeah. And they work fairly well. They, I
didn't know that. Okay, so these have they come in small cylinders. Now this is the Saint-Nectaire is flat. The Cantals and the Salers are these enormous things that look like a small barrel. But the Bleu d'Auvergne comes in what is a very small cylinder that's 2 to 3 kilos.
Yeah.
And all of these cheeses basically have a ratio of 1 to 10. The amount of milk that is required to make the cheese 10 times as much as
so
the
it's probably
cheese.
It's probably a whole d'Auvergne. It's probably 9 inches across and probably 5 inches tall.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's relatively small.
So like 20 centimeters par 20 centimeters by 10 maybe.
A little bit higher than, And then the last of these 5 cheeses, the other blue cheese, is the Forma Damber, which is produced at an altitude of between 600 and 1,600 meters. 1,600 meters, everybody out there, is multiplied by 3.2. We're getting pretty high up there.
Yeah.
This is in the Puy-de-Dôme and in the Haute-Loire also. But it's a slightly different taste to the cheese, and I'm not sure, to be honest, if it's a different cow or not. These are all, of course, cows, but I'm not sure why. But this is the smoothest and the creamiest and the mildest of all of these blue cheeses that are produced anywhere in France. There's also another one called the Bleu de Bresse, which is another blue cheese.
True,
but it's
also
the
same
creamy.
region.
It's a little bit. It's closer to Lyon.
It's
closer to Lyon. And again, this is also a cylinder, very similar in size to the Bleu d'Auvergne.
Yeah.
And also, you can either get it raw or pasteurized. And if you want to try a blue cheese and you're not sure if you like blue cheeses, this is probably the best one to start with.
Because it's the mildest of the
Because it's the mildest. And it's also the one that is the most used in recipes, either making some kind of savory tart or, sometimes making savory cakes or muffins or things like that. I mean,
now with a cookbook, I'm going to need to look and see recipes to make with these cheeses.
It'd
be fun to include some of that.
It would be fun to include. You can even do some sauces. I don't do that because I don't really cook like that. But you can even use the Forma Damber sometimes to make a sauce for things.
And for a dressing. Salad dressings would be really good with that.
And it doesn't have a bite to it. So these are the 5 cheeses that you can get that are produced in the Auvergne area. They are, except for the Salers, the other 4 are available pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
The Salers, as I said, is more of a specialty cheese.
So when does it come out?
It comes out in the winter.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful cheese to have in the wintertime. It's a great cheese. The Salers is a great cheese to have with apples or pears or grapes. It's just that kind of, it's like a mature cheddar, and I'm a big fan of cheddars.
Me too.
It's that kind of cheese, and it's a cheese that you can also use. You can put out a plate of charcuterie and cheese and have it.
Oh, here comes my cat.
The cat is protesting. She doesn't like what I just said about the cheese. I don't know. I
don't know. Of all these things, she'd eat some ham. She'll
eat some ham.
Yeah.
So, besides the cheese and the route, as I mentioned twice, there are 40 different stops. You obviously, nobody's going to do all of these. You can go online and you can see that the territory is very big. You can see that there's this huge list of these different farms, these different outlets. There are places where they give you a guided tour. There are places where you can just go in and get some cheese. But besides that, if you're going to venture into this area, I just made a list of some of the places that are really beautiful. You cannot see everything unless you spend 3 to 4 weeks in this area. It is really a huge area. It is fabulous. If you are into nature and hiking, it's one of the most wonderful parts of France to be
cycling too.
And cycling. And if you are into old villages, medieval villages and churches, it is also a fabulous area. It's just that everything's spread out, because it's a very big area. So I'm just going to mention the names of some of these places, which, of course, Annie will put into the text, and then mention some of the other activities and things that are possible to do in this area. Okay? So starting from basically at the bottom again, if you want, the village of Salers. It's beautiful. We spent the night there. It's a gorgeous medieval village made of basalt, which is kind of a brown beige rock. It's got fortified walls around it, and it has a huge abbey just on the outside of the village that is a fabulous, beautiful abbey to visit. And it's got a festival every year. That's what else? A cheese festival.
Of course.
When they promenade with the Salers cows decorated with flowers right through the center of the village.
And probably a Virgin Mary as well.
I'm not sure if the Virgin Mary was with the cows or not. To be honest,
why not?
Really sure. Why not? But it has 2 or 3 nice little charming hotels that have restaurants. It's a great place to stop. It really is. And then I'm not in any very specific order. You will have to forgive me for that. Mentioning some other places. All of these places are beautiful. All of these places have old medieval centers, and this is just some of the places that you can go to. You have the small city, more like a not so much village, of Saint-Flour.
I've been to that.
Which is very lovely.
Saint-Flour, but I was very young. I think that's the first place where I went on a overnight camp.
Really?
For like 10 days.
In the countryside around
Saint-Flour, yes. And I was 9 years old and I cried the whole time.
Oh.
So I don't remember anything about it. I just remember that my mother said, oh yeah, when we sent her to Saint-Flour, it was a disaster.
Okay. Well, maybe we should take this off the list.
No, I'd gladly go now. I'm not going to cry the whole time now.
Okay. There's also Riom. And again, I'm not doing this necessarily in the most logical order because Riom is north. It's very north.
I'll put them on a map for people. Riom, spell that for me.
Riom.
Okay.
Easy. Okay. And it's got a tourist train. It's a lovely town.
Then it's made it.
It's made it, right?
If it has a tourist train.
It's gorgeous. And it really has this, and it's this tourist train that takes you all the way around. You have the town of Issoire, which is beautiful.
Oh, I've heard of that in history books.
Yes.
Histoire, but I can't remember what for.
Because it's connected to the pilgrimage route, just like Puy-en-Velay. So
Puy-en-Velay, yes. That's the beginning. That's one of
the northern part.
Right.
Okay. Puy-en-Velay is fabulous. It is, from a historical, architectural point of view, it is unbelievable. It's big. But it's one of the places where the pilgrimage route started from. Yeah. So it still has a lot of pilgrimage activity attached to it.
Right, because today you can stay. That's the route I took, is the Puy-en-Velay route.
Exactly. And then you have the village of Saint-Nectaire.
Yeah.
Which is gorgeous. And in between all of these places, you have other places you can stop. You have places that are, one of the other things that grows a lot in the summertime in this area is wild raspberries. And there are lots of places where you can stop and get cakes with raspberries in them. And in the end of August, you have wild blueberries, which has nothing to do with the blueberries you get in the United States, everybody. It's another whole story. But they taste sort of similar, but they're tiny and they're on these little low bushes. But if you go in August like we did, if you drive in the countryside and you're on these wonderful little windy roads, you stop and you see these little low bushes filled with raspberries and blueberries.
And you steal them from the birds.
And you go out and you gobble them down. You gobble them down.
This morning I was walking by one of the fig trees over there, and the birds love the figs. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I know.
They love them.
So these are some of the beautiful places you can visit and stay. There's also, of course, lots and lots and lots of B&B, Airbnbs and gîtes in this entire region because it's so rural.
This would be a good place to check out the Gîtes de France, which is this is not a thing where they're paying me to say this, but Gîtes de France probably has some fabulous properties around there.
And they are good because if they're labeled Gîtes de France, it means that they really have to do certain things. They have to have certain conditions inside the house. And
because they're in the boonies, they're probably not that expensive.
Less expensive, for sure.
You've probably paid a lot more for a crummy room in New York City than you will for a Gîte de France in the Auvergne.
Absolutely. So I want to also mention, because we're talking about going there in the spring or the summer or the early fall, this is a part of France where winter comes relatively early. So it's gorgeous in the fall, by the way. It's really a beautiful area to be in the fall. But it's also an area that very quickly, certainly on the tops of the volcanoes and the volcanic section, which is in the Puy-de-Dôme, more or less, you can get a lot of fog. One day we were hiking there, and I'm not very sure-footed, and literally, we started out, you could see everything, and within an hour, I could not see my feet.
Wow.
And I got scared. I really got scared. And that's only because I'm like, where am I? But whatever. I mean, it was like, that was the moment when I went, okay.
Yeah.
This is an area. So in the summertime, or in the nice weather, let's put it that way, you have several festivals. If you go to Clermont-Ferrand, if you decide to start from there, or if you want to actually make a visit into a city, because it is, of course, a city, they have the largest festival of short films in the world every year. And it's been going on for something like 40 years. It's a very big deal. Aurillac, which is the city that is the biggest city and the capital of Cantal. And when I say biggest city, it's like 35,000 people. It has a very famous street theater festival every year. It's the biggest in all of Europe, and it's very famous. And at there's a town called La Chaise-Dieu, which is in the Puy-de-Dôme, which is near Puy-en-Velay. And there's a huge abbey there that has a very, very famous festival of classical and sacred music. And all of these three things are very well known and very popular.
With French people
mostly. But the sacred music at La Chaise-Dieu, I know that there are people that have come actually from other countries to actually go and listen. There's also, in the volcanic part, which is mostly in Puy-de-Dôme, there is a park called Vulcania.
Oh, yeah,
which is really...
I didn't go. We didn't go last time. We were close to it, and I wanted to go, and we didn't.
Well, when we went, it had not yet opened, and I would love to go back. Because
so this is like a theme park.
It's
for
a
kids.
Theme park about volcanoes.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be really, really good. There are also enormous numbers of trails and hiking trails and places that are tourist centers that explain about the volcanoes, about the volcanic area, the different. You have Mont Doré. You have Puy-Sancy, Mont Sancy, which is one of the biggest mountains. The mountains in this area are not that high.
Right.
They're only, I think the highest point is not quite 2,000 meters.
Yeah.
Because these are really old extinct volcanoes. But what is beautiful is that you can see them. You can see the shape of the volcano and the small craters and everything.
Makes hills.
It makes these gorgeous, beautiful, very green hills and very rich land. And you have endless numbers of other kinds of outdoor activities. As you say, you can bike through the area.
Yep.
If you're a serious biker, you can.
I'm sure they have 5Ks and 10Ks and 15Ks and
I'm sure they
trails and all the sorts of things for sporty people.
Yes. they have everything.
But it's probably between May and late September, I would guess. Because
absolutely.
The rest of the year, it's probably very, very dead.
It gets cold. It gets wet and cold.
And French people, as soon as it gets cold, we're all inside.
No, but
we don't go anywhere.
The Tour de France always goes through a part of the Auvergne area.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, of course, is if you're interested in things like the pilgrimage route, the route that eventually will go to Compostelle, which of course is in Spain. The Puy-en-Velay is a really interesting place to visit because it's where there were 3 or 4 places where pilgrims started from. Mm-hmm. One is Vézelay, which is further north in the Burgundy area, and the Puy-en-Velay was one of the most sacred places to start from. And that is why, if you see it on a map, if you follow down and you look at some of the other villages that are further south and veering west, that is why you have so many of these gorgeous medieval villages. Mm. And they're really in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you're driving in this pasture land and hills, and all of a sudden you come upon this gorgeous medieval village.
This is going to be a lot of small roads, very few people.
Right.
But that's okay. I mean, you're going to be driving slowly.
You're going to be driving slowly.
Yeah, but it's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, and then you get to stop and eat your cheese.
Wonderful.
I'm hungry. I'm hungry, Annie.
Well, you've made me hungry for cheese, but I don't know that I have a nice cheese selection today. But I do have a wonderful pot-au-feu. So
we'll have them coming up. I just want to mention, this is interesting. There's a word in the local dialect called Gaec, Gaec, which means farm. And so on the list, I printed out just one small section of this list of 40 different places where you can go and visit. And I saw this Gaec, I'm thinking, what is this? It's like some of them have normal French words, and it is because there is an Auvergne dialect. Mm-hmm. And that's because for a very long time, Auvergne was really a separate area with its own counts that were very, very powerful. Now, what's interesting is that in the Middle Ages, being rural was not bad in terms of the economy.
No, because everyone worked in that.
They worked the land.
Yeah, most people.
And they had, and so the counts of Auvergne were actually very, very powerful because they had a huge chunk of land. So, I was looking up, what it said about the language and the dialects. And of course, the old people some of them still speak Auvergne. Mm-hmm. Auvergne. And it's
nice.
It's kind of neat.
And they have some beautiful.
It's a version of Occitan.
Mm-hmm. And they also have beautiful costumes.
Yes.
They have beautiful, kind of, what do you call that? Folk dancing.
Folk dancing.
Yeah, they have very elaborate folk dances from the Auvergne. It's
very beautiful.
It's a beautiful part of France, really.
Just a beautiful part.
We keep on harping on this, but France is so much more than Paris. You have no idea. idea.
And what's wonderful is that from a perspective of the scale of something like the United States or Australia, I mean, we're talking about smaller areas and distinct in their architecture, distinct in their landscape, distinct in the customs. That's what's so wonderful.
Yeah. All right, let's go eat, Elyse.
Let's go eat.
Au revoir.
Bye.
Again, I want to thank my patrons for supporting the show and giving back. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so. You can see them at patreon.com/join us. Patreon, join us, no spaces or dashes. Thank you to all of you for supporting the show. Some of you for many years now. You are fantastic. And a shout out this week to new patrons: Paula Cook, Pam Ford, Lisa Walker, Karen Heppel, and Nelly Lazar, probably. Lazar, maybe? No, Lazar, I think. Thank you so much for becoming patrons and making this podcast possible. I published a new Patreon reward this week about a rumor that keeps coming back in France and how such a totally unfounded, stupid rumor has managed to have such a long life. Another way to support this podcast is to hire me to be your itinerary consultant. It'll cost you $50, but you get a custom itinerary that will fit your needs and save you a lot of time. Plus, we get to talk on the phone for about an hour and you get the input of a local. Email Annie at joinusinfrance.com to set that up and write itinerary review in the subject line. And I'll be doing one of those later today, which is fun. And if you'd like to support the show without spending a penny you wouldn't have otherwise, before you go shopping on Amazon, go to the bottom of any page on joinusinfrance.com and click on the Amazon ad. Because you came to Amazon through my site, I get a small commission and it does not cost you a penny more. And thank you so much. For my personal update this week, the cookbook is going great. We're having daube today. A very traditional dish, French dish, and I'm making it from my mother's recipe. Daube is a beef recipe, and my daughter, she's visiting for the weekend, and she normally doesn't eat meat, but she said, "It smells so good, Mama. I haven't smelled that smell for a long time." So I think she'll eat some of it, even though she, yeah. I'm the devil, I guess. But, great food cooked at home definitely makes life better. And from the feedback I'm getting from you, I know it will make your life better too. One reviewer said it was his first time cooking for his family ever. And they loved the recipe and they want him to make it again. So if I can convince a few more dads to cook, I will definitely feel like I'm doing some good in the world. I've sent out 10 recipes to be tested so far. If you're in one of the 5 groups that hasn't received a recipe yet, please be patient. One should arrive this week. And then I'll start sending a second recipe to the folks who filled out the review form. It's moving along at a quick pace, and I'm very, very grateful for your help. I've been asking questions on the Join Us in France closed group on Facebook too, and I really appreciate all the answers you give me. It helps move this project along really fast. Let's talk COVID for just a second. It seems that the French authorities have decided that life must go on despite the virus. By now, hospitals do a good job, a better job at treatments. Medical professionals have the PPE they need. We all have masks, and at-risk people have been warned. The problem is with tests. The French health system has been giving over 1 million PCR tests a week in France recently. These tests are free and anyone can request one, but the results are slow because labs are overwhelmed. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 days, and that's the root of our problem. I think people don't understand the difference between being infected and being sick. You can be infected and transmit the virus without feeling sick. I learned this week from listening to an excellent episode of This Week in Virology that this is true with cold viruses as well. If you've had a particular cold virus before, your immune system fights it off and you don't feel like you have a cold, but you're still infected and you're still passing it on. But when it's just a cold, it's not a big deal. But when it's COVID-19 and it kills 2 to 3% of people who contract it, then it's a big deal. So all those people who get a PCR test because maybe they went to a party or they went to an event or they were around many people and it takes 3 to 5 days to get the result, they keep going to work and go to school in the meantime, and they are the ones who are keeping this virus going. But the country cannot afford another shutdown, so it's about taking personal responsibility for where we go and how many people we hang out with. Sadly, this means no international travel until a vaccine has been developed and widely distributed. But the numbers are climbing in France, and if you're from one of the countries where you can come visit, Canada, for example, all of Europe, for example, I would still recommend you wait. It will get better, but it will take time. Now let's talk about Swiffer the dog. He's back and he's probably going to be with us for 4 to 5 weeks. His owner is off to Wales to her Erasmus college year, and the owner's mother is still doing chemo. I saw both of them yesterday. The mother is hanging in there. The first chemo just about killed her. She sounded horrible, but she says it gets easier every time, although they give her different cocktails every time she goes. So she never knows how her body is going to react. But she's seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. We talked outside, by the way, with masks on. So just in case you were wondering, we were being very safe. And the daughter has found a room in a house with 5 other students where she can have the dog. We'll fly him once he's done with her 2-week home confinement. She's going to Wales. I hesitate to even try to say the name. Aberystwyth or something. I can't say that name to save my life. But she's going to college there. It's a beautiful college town on the coast of Wales. But she has to confine at home for 2 weeks. And she's not supposed to be outside at all for 2 weeks. She's supposed to get grocery delivered and all of that. Then she'll get settled with her school once the 2 weeks have passed. And, she'll get used to the lay of the land and stuff like that. And then Swiffer will fly to her. Well, we'll fly to London and she'll go pick him up in London. So Swiffer should be going to Wales in a few weeks. But this morning, I'm recording this on Saturday morning, the day before I release the episode. I took the dogs on a walk, as always, and finally it's a little cooler. We even have a tiny bit of rain. We're supposed to be rained on every day a little bit for the next 10 days, which is going to be so nice because it's been so dry and so hot. Last Thursday was the hottest September 17 ever recorded. It felt like the middle of the summer. It was awful. So I'm so glad it's cooling off finally. But anyway, so this morning I finally get a cool day to go walk the dogs. And I have the 3 dogs with me. And when we get to my chemin, there's a long row of hunters, all in their orange vests, and they're all sitting in the fields with their guns, and it looks like an organized something or other. I don't know anything about hunting, but they looked organized, and they had walkie-talkies and stuff. So it doesn't scare me when it's organized like that. It's when I see the one lone hunter just going nuts after some poor animal that, I don't know. For some reason, the organized stuff doesn't scare me. Anyway, so they must have gotten the word that whatever they were doing was over because they all gathered up and started walking on the chemin towards me. And one of the hunters gives me a big smile and he says, "Oh, un griffon nivernais. Does he hunt?" And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure. No, he doesn't hunt. I know that, but I didn't know he was a griffon nivernais. To me, he looked like a mutt, but not a very good-looking mutt either. And then a few hundred yards later, another hunter says, "Oh, un griffon nivernais. Does he hunt?" And I'm like, "No, he doesn't hunt." But at the second hunter, he was pulling out a dead wild boar out of the ditch, and the dog went nuts. He just was pulling, and this is a dog that I can't let him off leash because he's just not that well. But now I understand. He's a hunting dog. He's behaving like a hunting dog, and he just wanted to smell everything and follow the trace and all the track and everything. So then I pulled up my phone and looked Griffon Nivernais on my phone, and sure enough, he is one. And he's not a mutt. He's a completely perfect example of his breed. And these are very unusual hunting dogs from the south of France, the southwest of France. And there's not many of them. They used to be huge when French kings hunted all over. They had huge packs of these dogs because they are very athletic, and it's true that the boy can pull like nobody's business. They can run and run and run and run, and they are fearless, and they are particularly good when hunting boar. There you go. And we do have wild boars. They killed 2 of them in the forest that's near my house just this morning. And when we hooked around and came back, they had pulled the poor dead animal, and you could see traces of blood. I could see them, but he definitely could sniff them. And when I made him go the opposite direction so we could go home, he just cried and cried and cried. So now I know why Swiffer the dog is so intent on running off whenever we open the gate, because that's his nature. He's supposed to be a runner, and he's supposed to run in the woods in a pack with a bunch of other hunting dogs. Unfortunately, that's not what he's doing at my house, but he got a little taste of it this morning, and he seemed very, very motivated by this whole thing. If you enjoy the show, I would love it if you would introduce a friend to the podcast and show them how to listen. And next week on the podcast, I will bring you an episode about Sancerre, another beautiful, beautiful part of France. And it's not near as famous as it deserves to be, although you've probably heard the name Sancerre because of the delicious wine that they make there. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Thank you so much for listening. Keep your spirits up. I know the news has been dreadful, especially in the US, but even in France with all the COVID stuff, it's not that good. But just keep your spirits up. And today I got notification that I can vote via an app. I vote in Utah, and I can vote via an app. And my husband and daughter have done it already, and I need to install the app and do it. That's the only thing we can do at this point, is avoid the news and make sure we vote. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So thank you for listening. I hope you join me next week so we can look around France together. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2020 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.